Hello, South Shore mathematicians. Welcome back to third grade online with Miss Naz. Today in Math with Naz, we are going to work on Module 5, Lesson 16. What you will need for this day's work is your whiteboard and a marker if you have it. If not, a piece of paper and your journal will be fine, or anything to write on. We are going to be plotting numbers on a number line that are greater than 1 today. So go grab what you need to write with and come on back. All right, third graders, watch as I partition this number line. I'm going to draw a number line here, and I'm going to label it 0 and 2, and 1 would be, I'm going to estimate, would be in the middle somewhere. So to do my halves, I know that here I haven't moved at all. I'm at 0. This is 0 halves. We've been doing this a lot in small groups. Now the half would be about halfway between 0 and 1, which I'm going to estimate to be right about there. Now this is 1 half, and this is another 1 half jump. 1 half and 1 half are how many halves? Say it out loud. That's right, 2 halves. So 1 is equivalent to or the same as 2 halves. Now I'm going to do the same thing between 1 and 2 to find my half. 1 half would be, I would estimate it to be in the middle of 1 and 2. But it's not 1 half because I've had 1 half and another 1 half to make 2 halves and another 1 half. That's 3 halves. Anytime the number on top is bigger than the number on bottom, the fraction is larger than 1. So to find 2, I'm going to do another jump of a half. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 halves. 4 halves is equivalent to or the same as 2. Now that you've watched me do it one time and refreshed your memory, go ahead and draw a number line on your whiteboard. And to make it easier on myself, I'm going to turn my board horizontally and make my number line go all the way across to give myself lots of room. Okay, third graders, though, today we are going to start partitioning numbers that are greater than 1, and we're not anymore going to start from 0. Now we're going to go ahead and start from 1. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 1 on my number line. You do the same. And then I'm going to put a 2 on my number line. Now to find the fraction that 1 is equivalent to, I have to understand how many parts are in my 1. Well, today we're partitioning this into fourths. So go ahead and break up your number line into 4 equals parts. Remember, when I'm doing fourths, I like to estimate the middle and then estimate the middle of each of my parts, 2, 3, to get 4 parts. Now let's think about 1. Which fraction is equivalent to 1? So I'm going to take a rectangle here, and I'm going to partition the rectangle like I did the number line into fourths, and then I'm going to write the unit fraction. And that will tell me how many fourths are in 1. Go ahead and count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 fourths in 1. In other words, 1 is equivalent to or the same as 1. 4 fourths is equivalent to 1. Now let's go all the way down here and look at the 2. Well, I'm going to do the same thing. On my board, I'll draw 2 rectangles of approximately the same size, and I'll partition those in halves. And then in halves again to make fourths. So I have, now I'll write the unit fraction, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 fourths in 1, 5, 6, 7, 8/4 and 2. So 2 is equivalent to 8/4. Equivalent to or the same as 8/4. Okay, go ahead, pause the video, and fill in all the other plot lines on our number line. Okay, third graders, what did you say? 4/4 is equivalent to 1. What comes next? Say it out loud. 5/4. What comes next? Say it out loud. 6/4. What comes next? Say it out loud. 7/4. So I have now partitioned this number line starting at 1 and moving to 2 by fourths. Nice job, third graders. Go ahead and erase your board. Okay, let's draw another number line. I'm going to keep my board horizontal. I did find that that worked much better for me. This time, instead of partitioning our number line in fourths, we're going to partition our number line into thirds. So instead of also starting at 1, I'm actually going to start at 2. And I'm going to put 3 in the middle and 4 at the end. You do the same thing. Go ahead and partition 2, 3, and 4, or plot them where they would be on the number line. When you've done that, partition each of your parts into thirds. Let's take a look at 2. We're going to find the number that 2 is equivalent to. So I'm going to do what I did before to help us out. I'm going to draw 2 rectangles, because after all, this 2 does represent 2 holes. So here's 2 rectangles, and I'm going to partition them into thirds. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3, 5/3, and 6/3. 2 is equivalent to 6/3. I'm going to write 6/3 on my number line under the 2 because they mean the same thing. And I'm going to go ahead and box in the fractions that are equivalent to the whole numbers. 2 is a whole number. 6/3 is the fraction that's equivalent to it. Now what I want you to do is tell me, what would 3 be? What fraction is equivalent to 3? Go ahead and write it on your number line and box it in. Third graders, the answer is 9/3. If we start at 6/3, that's 1 more third, 2 more thirds, 3 more thirds. 6/3 plus 3/3 is 9/3. Please do the same thing for 4. Find the fraction that is equivalent to 4/3 and write it in and box in your answer. Nine thirds and 1/3 is 10/3, and 1/3 is 11/3, and 1 more third is 12/3. Go ahead and pause your video and fill in all the other plot points on our number line to get all of your thirds filled in. Six thirds, 7/3, 8/3, 9/3, 10/3, and 11/3, and 4 is equivalent to 12/3. Nice job, third graders. Okay, third graders, so one thing I want to point out to you on our number line is that 2 is equivalent to 6/3, 3 is equivalent to 9/3, and 4 is equivalent to 12/3. What pattern are you seeing? I'm seeing a skip count pattern. 3 would be 1, 6, 9, 12. 6, 9, 12. And we know that the 1 is 3/3 would be over here off my number line, off the part of the number line you can see. 6, 9, 12. We're skip counting by 3s because every time we're adding 1/3. So what would 5 be? Estimate in your head. If 4 is 12/3, what fraction, would be equivalent to 5? Skip count by 3s. 12 plus 3 is 15. So 5 would be equivalent to 15/3. Okay, go ahead and erase your board. Okay, third graders, now I have a challenge for you. I would like for you to draw your own number line. The first thing you're going to do is set your endpoints. This time, your endpoints are 3 and 6. Next up, you're going to partition your number line into halves, label your number line, and at the very end, box in the fractions equivalent to the whole numbers. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and work on a number line with endpoints 3 and 6, partitioned into halves, everything labeled, and a box around the fractions that are equivalent to your whole numbers. Go. Okay, third graders. If you're not done, keep the video paused. If you are done, check your work to mine. So I'm going to have endpoints of 3 and 6. Well, I also need 4 and 5 on here, so I'm going to partition this into thirds. 4, 5. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm going to partition the whole thing into halves. So I need to think about how many halves are in 3 wholes. Did you just know it, or did you do your box? Either way works. These are my 3 wholes. And my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 halves. I'm going to partition the rest into halves. If this is 6 halves, what comes next? 7 halves. Count with me. 8 halves. 9 halves. 10 halves. 11 halves. 12 halves. Now I'm going to box in the fractions that are equivalent to the whole numbers. And let's see if we can find this skip counting pattern. 6, 8, 10, 12. 6, 8, 10, 12. What am I skip counting by? Yeah, 2s. So what would 7 be? How many halves would be in 7? Finish the skip count pattern. 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. In 7, there would be 14 halves. Nice job, third graders. Now here's your independent work for the day. You are going to be working on the first page of Lesson 16, problem set, page 1. So what I want you to write on your paper is today's date, which is 6-8-20, and write lesson 16.1 in your journal. So the problem set says, estimate to equally partition and label fractions on the number line. Label the wholes as fractions and box them in. The first one is done for you. So I see here that 1A says halves. They have 0, 1, and 2 as their whole numbers, and it looks like they're writing their fractions on top and their whole numbers on bottom, which is perfectly fine. So 0 is equivalent to 0 halves. In between 0 and 1 is 1 half. 2 is equivalent to 2 halves. In between 1 is equivalent to 2 halves. In between 1 and 2, we find 3 halves, and 2 is equivalent to 4 halves. So now we're going to do the same thing for 1B, but we're going to do it in thirds. So in your journal, write 1B and draw your number line. The number line will be in thirds. They're starting with 1 and 2. So your job is going to be to partition between 1 and 2 into thirds, and then find the numbers that are equivalent to 1 and to 2 and fill in your whole number line. When you're done, you'll move on to 1C, which you're partitioning into halves between 2, 3, and 4. Then on to 1D, that you're partitioning with endpoints 3 and 5. And last, you're doing 1E, that you're partitioning with endpoints into 6 and 9, and you're partitioning into thirds. Either print this out if that's your plan at home, or write it in your journal, but make sure you send your work into your teacher so we can see the great work you're doing. Third graders, thanks so much for coming to this lesson today. Take care. Talk soon.